that's it. You can't ever sit there for 8 hours because you've got to take your stuff and, pack up, go to the toilet and pack up again.
I've got a tip for you on that. Take electrolytes in your water, and it means you have to have less, fluid in your bladder.
Does that mean you just don't drink as much, basically?
You're refreshed by less actual fluid going into your bladder. Because it goes into your bloodstream better. It refreshes you better.
Right.
Electrolytes.
So what's an electrolyte? I mean, forgive my ignorance. I should know this, but
just like little capsules that you just put it in your water. It fizzes up, effervescent, kind of like Barocca. It's the same type of thing as a Barocca, little tablet. You put it into your water, and it just like one glass of water refreshes you as much as like 4.
But I mean, from a chemical
biological perspective.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. Nathan knows what he's talking about.
I mean, I didn't prep for a science webinar, to be honest. But
so I think this is why my brother says eat a bag of crisps after you've done a marathon or something. Like get the salts back in your system, right? So I need to go. I actually need to take biology GCSE or something. Because I literally know nothing at all. I need to just have basic level of understanding of how human bodies work. Craziness. Anyway, welcome everybody to Brain Food Live on Air, bringing it to you every Friday, no fail. This is the 3rd Brain Food Live this week. Would you believe it? It's been a triple header. I hope you've enjoyed the shows and actually not been too tired of seeing me on screen. I think I've been on screen every single day this week. You might just be a little bit bored of my voice by now. Thank you for your comments, by the way, on episode 300. This is actually already episode 308 or something. But it's episode 300 because we had a total technical snafu last time we tried to run this show, if you remember, and we had to reschedule it. So this is a rescheduled show from way back then. And we've got the same guests on. We're going to talk about the same topic because I think it's a really interesting one to talk about. Hiring manager self-serve. It was the past of recruitment. Then TA emerged and we started doing all of the centralizing of all of the recruitment stuff. But guess what? Is a technology, and particular artificial intelligence, going to help us redistribute that work back to the line? And should we do that? After all, it seems to me pretty obviously that it's the hiring manager that needs to care most about this. They're the ones that want to read the CVs. They're the ones that want to speak to the candidates. They're the ones that make the decision. Why are we in the way? That's the question we're going to try and tackle today. How does AI change the centralization, decentralization, operating model of talent acquisition? So, folks, I'm glad to see you here. I just want to do a few sound checks, of course. I want to make sure everyone can hear and see me okay. Folks, if you're watching this on Crowdcast, let me know if the audio is fine. You should see myself in usual position. Adam, of course, in a public setting as usual. And I'm watching this on LinkedIn. Anyway, people should be watching this on LinkedIn. Adam is broadcasting it. I'm broadcasting it. Maybe a few other people are as well. If you're watching it in those places, let me know in the comments whether you can hear and see us okay. My audio sounds weird today, but I think it's just me. So hopefully that's going to be fine.
It's all fine.
Yeah, it looks okay. Audra, thanks for coming along. We need to bring you on the show, Audra. If that's Audra Knight, that is. But any Audra is fine, to be honest. That's a bit rude. Audra, whichever Audra you are, welcome to come on. Okay, we're ready to go. Folks, we always have to say thanks to our sponsors before we kick off. Sponsors make sure Brain Food Live keep the show and the conversations on the road. And this week's sponsor, one of our favorites, it is Ashby, of course, probably the most talked about, exciting sort of ATS on the market right now. They had their big conference yesterday. Anybody go to Ashby One, let me know how it all went. Whole suite of announcements coming out. I've yet to read their keynote and their product update, but I will do that because I think it's really interesting to see from a company like this what they're basically doing. So I want to share the link to their event. Event obviously is over, but their keynote isn't. You can still register on this and you can still watch the product update from Ben. I think it's well worth doing. They've been innovating like mad, this company. So very interested to see what they've got in the pipeline for the rest of this year. Anyway, thank you for Ashby for the sponsorship of this episode. Got Adam Gordon on screen, of course. Adam, good to see you. And yes, people were mentioning your tan, classic Scottish tan, mate. Not quite brown, it's a bit pink, isn't it? But that's
You
how it
always
is.
comment on that. I think you call me Ruddy most of the time, but I have been abroad quite a few times recently. But yeah, I kind of takes quite a while before I actually look brown. It's mostly red.
That's on brand though. That's a very it proves your Scottish bona fides. You go Ruddy first. Okay, let's do the review of the newsletter, Adam. Did you read it last week? And if so, what was interesting, man?
Yeah, well, you mentioned Ashby, and so I wanted to talk about briefly George LaRock's WorkTech VC report. He does one every quarter. This is for Q1 2025. There was 1.24 billion of deals across um, nearly 60 investments, more than doubling the investments that were made in Q4 of 2024. A lot of them in early stage companies, a lot of them in AI first companies. The link to Ashby is that I know that Ashby is, as a more modern business, it's got far less technical debt than some of the established players that it's looking to displace within the talent acquisition teams. Um, the distribution of the investment was pretty global. So there was a lot in North America, but there was also a lot in Europe and a lot in Asia Pacific as well. Follow George LaRock and Work Tech if you're interested in recruitment technology, talent technology, work technology, I should say.
100%. And we're going to be speaking to George LaRock actually in a Brainfood Live. So we've got him and Madeline Lorano to come in, I think, in early June. And it's exactly this, to review where the money is going in recruitment technology or work technology. And I think that for me gives a decent kind of read as to how sort of recruitment itself is going to change, because we've seen, for instance, sourcing technology kind of drop down in terms of investment. That was like massively hot prior to massive candidate surge. Now that's no longer the case. We've seen big investments coming into verification tech, assessment tech, because everyone's trying to deal with the over application scenario. So I'd be interested to see where the segmentation, like a deeper dive as to where, from a sector point of view within work tech, these investments are going. But yeah, really good to see. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add two, like there's two which aren't included in that, which have just been announced in the last 2 weeks, and like they're both automation. So one of them being Chronify, which announced 15 million, it's about $20 million of investment. Chronify like automates diary management, like interview scheduling, that type of thing. I mean, clearly the world is really taking on how do we not have, sorry if there's any talent coordinators in here, but that's probably, you need to start looking at using your skills for other things. And then the other one was Stack One, which I mean, really great. And the exciting thing about that is, so they are really like an integration layer connector for people that want to connect it to HRIS, an applicant tracking system. And so you pay to access Stack One, and then Stack One's got the connectivity with that. But the interesting thing about their also $20 million announcement is that they said that their ambition is to become the connectivity kind of glue for AI agents within the talent space.
Yeah, both great businesses, and actually businesses with strong links to the UK as well. So it's good to see a little bit of a boost to the news here over here in the United Kingdom. So yeah, two great businesses. Do check them out. I think it tells me again, like we're looking at reading the runes as to where investment's going to go. A lot of the procedural stuff is going to get a lot smoother. There's no question about that. We're getting close to turnkey. Some of the stuff that previously took 2 or 3 people to kind of white glove across the process. So that's got to be positive news, I think. Okay, cool. By the way, the George LaRock Brainfood Live is actually up and available to register. So let me just share the screen, sort of the crowdcast with you on that, and you can go ahead and register on this straight away. Copy link. Go ahead, Adam. What's the next thing that you want to talk about?
Well, Martin Redstone's LinkedIn article about why large language models have no place in hiring decisions. I think he called it the confidence trap. My summary of his article is that large language models sound convincing, but they're not transparent. Their internal logic's chaotic. Even the newest models, he's saying, are cheat. They're cheat. They're like manipulating outcomes in order to sound really convincing. He says they violate key legal requirements like GDPR and the EU AI Act. And he's absolutely adamant that we shouldn't be using large language models in terms of like making decisions on should we move this candidate forward or should we not. And overall, I think he sounds convincing. I don't know if he used AI to write his article or not, but he definitely sounds convincing.
I hope Martin's listening to this because he's right. He's very convincing. Brilliant article. And in fact, Martin, I do think everyone should follow Martin. He's been really deep into the conversational AI space, conversational interface space for a long while, even pre-AI, and now obviously he's carried it in to the AI space. But his kind of self-education, and now he's like distributing his education and sharing it with everyone else on how it complies or not. I think it's very, very, very interesting. But yeah, I think his angle is probably quite conservative. Not saying it's not true. It's probably quite conservative. If you look at where the tech is sitting, according to his analysis of it, the tech is probably more aggressive in terms of its interpretation of the compliance side than Martin's is. So I think there is going to be a little bit of that vendor side, pushing the envelope a little bit, maybe waiting for case law to come in and give people a slap. But yeah, it's good to get a ground in the newsletter that Martin writes. I think he's publishing every week, but I must follow. So share the link in the chat stream there. Okay, give us one more, mate, before we get into this.
Well, the internet's dying, and we need to understand why it's dying and what that means for talent attraction. So for the first time ever, Google searches on Safari have dropped. And the article suggests that, I'm sorry, I don't actually know who it was that published this. I can't remember. I think it was shared by Stephen Rothberg. I can't remember who actually wrote it. And the suggestion is that internet searches have dropped because people are turning to AI tools like ChatGPT and Copilot and things like that. Google's click-through rates to websites for Google searches are down nearly 80% because of their AI generated summaries, which are often giving people, the information without them having to even go into a website. I mean, yesterday, my daughter was doing like a kind of quiz thing for school. She's 8 years old. I gave her ChatGPT. My wife came in and said, "No, give her Google. She knows how to use that better." I said, "Yeah, but I don't want her like having to go into different websites and things." She said, "No, honestly, the summaries at the top are going to be just exactly as good as ChatGPT will be." So anyway, it worked for her. The traffic's really hurting journalism. The traffic dropped. And there's a lot of mainstream media organizations like CNN and NBC who have been announcing layoffs in their broadcasting journalistic staff. I mean, it effectively says Google's dominance for search is still huge, but that the future for browser-based web search like that is like very far from certain.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, it wasn't so long ago we thought Google had a permanent lock in terms of how information was discovered. But now, of course, we are stopping at the recommendation or the generation from ChatGPT or whatever tool it used. And the key stat here was that Google's own Gemini summary was stopping people from then going to click onto the blue links. Because the summary is good enough, and it should be good enough because it's crawling its own data. It's the reason why Google didn't sort of sat on their lead on AI for so long, because they basically OpenAI took their transformer model and launched it ahead of Google. Google had it years in advance, but I think they knew that if they released it, it would completely change how search worked, and it would damage sort of their ads models. So huge change, I think, coming. All kinds of implications for talent, employer branding. We did a careers pages sort of conversation yesterday. Like, how do we get people to careers pages again? Probably isn't going to be SEO on a sort of a search engine, right? So it's going to be very different.
There's a really interesting element of evolution in this, right? Because when Google was first, there was I think it was called Disrupted or something like that. The original book about the start of Google, and there's Ken Auletta, I think, wrote it, and there's a really interesting area in there where the two guys, Larry and Sergey, are in the office of some big NBC, maybe CEO's office, some really famous media guy from the 80s and 70s, 80s, 90s in the US. And he was listening to what they're planning to do and looked at what they were doing. and he got absolutely mad. He jumped up, he slammed his fists on the table and shouted, "You're effing with the magic," right? And I wonder if the top bosses in Google are jumping on the table and they're shouting, "These LLMs are effing with the magic."
And the more you read about Google as well, I mean, this is not to hammer on Google, but there's lots of stories to say they got a little bit lost in the money making side and they didn't deliver the better search experience, which I think we can all agree was true even prior to ChatGPT. And there's some evidence to say that they actually deliberately kind of throttled the right search results in order to have like longer linger time on ads and stuff. Because obviously they were displaying ads on pages and they wanted to say to the advertisers, oh, we're getting 5 seconds of extra time, people looking at this page and looking at your ad, therefore they'll just give you like poorer search sort of outcomes and what have you. So anyway, big changes coming for those guys.
They all these companies that we use so much, especially in recruiting, probably in every industry, but they all do a load of things that were like, they've totally lost the plot, they're doing stupid things now. We've all said it about LinkedIn, about like daft things that they've brought into the market. Incidentally, the guy Harry who was on and the updates that they gave on Brain Food the other day was really great. They've done loads of bad things. Indeed's been given a lot of negative scrutiny for all the things that they've done. Google's the same. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, you're right. They've got so much money and they've got so much like brain power still in there that the ability to recover in some way, I'm sure, is there. So, and you know what? They've still got the best chance of building the best AI. They've got the information, they've got the data more than anybody, and presumably they could cut a sort of OpenAI off it at some point if they want to get really nasty. They could do that. All right, let's get on with the show. Hiring manager self-serve. What's your view on the topic, Adam?
Well, I've done a lot of research on this. I've probably done between 2023 and now, I've probably done 30, 40 hours of focus groups on this exact subject around what are talent acquisition teams expecting to happen? What are they actually aiming to move forward right now? It is an undeniable movement. Yeah, I'm pretty deep into it, and there's going to be a very large number of tasks which recruiters have traditionally done, which are getting moved back onto the hiring managers to do. So in some companies, I am certain that there's going to be 100% self-service within the next, with probably this year. And then there's others where, if you're in a law firm, the partners in the law firm are going to still need white glove treatment. They're not going to do anything that, recruiters have traditionally done. So it's horses for courses, and I'm excited to learn from our experts.
Yeah, horses for courses. I think there probably will be sectoral differences, and I think there maybe even be attitudinal sort of differences in the sense that you've got managers who don't want to do it. I mean, I think there's certain people that would say, actually, I don't like this part of the job. This is not what I want to do. So it could well be that. But let's have a look at our guests. They're the ones that are going to tell us a little bit more. We have Martin Warren here, of course. Martin, wonderful to see you, sir. I know it's like super late for you in Sing, but thanks for jumping onto the call. You were the reason for this show, actually, because it was one of your examples that I wanted to explore in depth. So great to see you. And we have Lindsay Taylor here as well, looking ravishing in that orange dress. Great to see you, Lindsay. Let's do some intros for the people who don't know the folks here. Martin, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Sure, Hung. Great to see you again. And hey, Adam, nice to meet you, Lindsay. So I'm based down in Singapore. It's not too late. It's 9:20 Friday night here. So my background is like 20 plus years in recruitment, but more really focused on talent sourcing. And up until recently, for the previous 7 years, I've headed up the head of talent sourcing and channels at Grab. I'm sure if people have been down to Southeast Asia, they know who Grab is. If you don't, it's like the Uber version of in Southeast Asia. So so that's my background.
Fantastic stuff. Great to see you. I've just shared Martin's link in the LinkedIn in the chat, so go and connect with him. Lindsay, great to see you again. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Absolutely. Nice to meet you too, Martin. I'm Lindsay Taylor. This is my 25th year officially in TA, although I have over the last 18 months morphed now more to HR, generalist business partner, and all things HR transformation. So I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, great stuff. On that note, Lindsay's going to be bouncing back on Brainfood Live to talk exactly about this topic of expanding scope beyond TA. So make sure you come and join us for that as well. Okay, let's kick off. I want to go with you firstly, Martin, because you had a very interesting case. You posted it online. I thought, wow, that's really, really interesting use case. Can you just tell us about that? What's the context? What's the problem? What did you do to solve this? Martin, you're on mute, I'm afraid. Oh, Martin is still on mute. How did that happen? Let me unmute you. Oh, there we go. I must have accidentally muted. Go ahead, Martin. Did you hear my question?
I did hear your question, Hung, and if I remember quickly what we talked about, it was really about how we got at Grab, how we brought hiring managers into the recruitment process. So using some technology that we had, which was our sourcing platform, we spent a lot of time with a lot of our senior hiring managers and really understanding their roles. And these were like really critical roles, senior roles, right? And we would send the outreach on behalf of the hiring manager. So we'd actually connect them up, the system up to their email. And the recruiter would write the message or craft the message, give it to the hiring manager to make sure that, the tone was right and it was kind of how they would present it. And then we would automate that outreach to candidates. And when candidates responded, they would respond back to the hiring manager, so it would go into their inbox, and we could track it in the platform that we had, so the sourcer could see it. We could even respond on behalf of the hiring manager if they weren't around for a couple of days. But to cut a long story short, what this actually did was, if that same message was sent from the talent sourcer, we probably got 20 to 30% reply rates. So if it's a really niche pool, let's say we're sending it to 100 candidates and we get 30 responses, versus when we sent it from the hiring manager, the actual open rates didn't go up anymore. But what crazy stuff happened was we could get up to 80% reply rates because, the candidates, they wanted to talk to the hiring manager. And when they saw it was from the hiring manager and there was a button in there, say, hey, schedule a call. And when they clicked on that button, it brought up the hiring manager's calendar and they could select the slot. And the other thing that we did was we trained the hiring managers to make sure that they make that call. Don't put it off to someone else. Don't send it to the TA to do. And have a discussion. It's like you're meeting first time at a barbecue, right? Don't go into selling the job. Talk about them. Understand what's important to them. What they're looking for, and have a chit chat. And we made some really good hires from that process. And when I left Grab, we had over 100 hiring managers that we were doing that with. In fact, we had to push hiring managers away because we couldn't manage it. So that was kind of why I believe self-serve is it's for certain roles and certain companies. That's where you need to move to.
Yeah, really, really good example, Martin. And my good mates that work in sort of the copywriting angle of it and how to write good copy and all the rest of it, they're going to hate me when I say this, but I don't think copy is all that important. The most important thing is the sender identity. And I think this is true. You could test it yourself. Go on any social network, go on any whatever. You have a different identity sending the message. That is going to be a very significant contributing factor to whether you get a response at all. And I think 20% reply rate, should I say, from a recruiter is probably about average. I think even LinkedIn advertise it as that, don't they? So that's bench. So if you're hitting 25% reply, guess what? That's average. However, if you can zoom that up to 80%, wow. I mean, that's going to make a huge difference in terms of the quantity of hires you make, but also presumably the quality, because there's going to be a lot of people that have previously simply ignored the message. They may be actually extremely good candidates that no matter how good your copy was or how sophisticated your drip marketing campaign was, they weren't going to respond because it was a recruiter that sent the outreach. So really, really good. Go ahead, Mark.
Just to say one other thing that happened, which we kind of didn't really think about, but what actually did also is candidates that responded who weren't interested, they still had a conversation, most of them, right? So it built a network, right? And we actually made hires through referrals from some of these people, or they came on board at a later date, or we actually hired a couple as advisors. because we were going after some very senior people for some roles. So it had, a real impact that we never kind of thought that, this would happen. So it was quite spectacular in some regards what we did.
It's all about rapport, and it's all about making the candidate feel like there's a bit of red carpet treatment happening here. So if I'm a marketing executive and the chief marketing officer at Grab sends me an invite to connect on LinkedIn and then sends me a message saying, how are you getting on? What's your top priority, or what's the most important thing you're interested in right now in your career, or maybe something a bit better than that. But they're going to feel special. They're going to feel handpicked. And they're far more likely, they don't want to burn the bridges with that individual in the future. So, whether they're looking for a job right now or not, then, they're going to want to develop that relationship. And the other thing is, like, I'm a recruiter. We're all recruiters, right? Whatever we do now, we're all recruiters. I don't want to diss recruiters, but everyone's had a bad experience with a recruiter, right? Whereas the marketing executive in Singapore has probably never had a bad experience with the chief marketing officer in Singapore. So they're going to want to reply. It's all about, rapport.
I was going to say, I think it also cuts through the noise, right, of recruiters, because we all get, an influx of in-mails, calls, approaches, one hopes, right, from headhunters and recruiters. But when the hiring manager themselves is reaching out, I do think that it stands out and people are going to pay more attention. And Martin, you're calling it out there with 80% response rates that I don't think I've ever had any TA team have before.
And it's really putting, I think it's really putting the recruiter and the hiring manager at the center, and not the TA, right? And like I said, it's, they want to talk to you. They want to have a conversation with you, and the hiring manager can best sell the opportunity, right? Even if you're a great TA, I think the hiring manager can still sell, what the team's like, what the impact, what projects we're working on, so they can still do that the best, and that's kind of what we saw.
Okay, there's couple of things I want to just mention real quick on extending of Adam's point about the relationship building aspect of it. Like the candidate doesn't want to sees the opportunity of building a relationship. That's very, very important. But there's also an implication that they might burn a relationship if they ignore a hiring manager. Let's say there was a senior person in industry message me and I decided, whatever, I'm not interested. Guess what? What if there's probably a little brainworm in the back of my mind saying, you know what, you better just say hello to this guy, because if you don't, this person may in future have an opportunity that could impact your career. So you just kind of it just makes sense to get back. So that is a very interesting angle of it. I want to discuss, okay, all this sounds wonderful, but was there a reason why hiring managers don't do this as a default? Like, why did we ever, if it works so well, the hiring managers being the front of the recruiting top of the funnel, why did we ever move away from it? I guess it must be a capacity issue or something, isn't it? Did it sort of happen in the digital era where it just got a bit too noisy, or any theories as to why it went to recruiters to do this?
From my point of view, Hung, I would say that there's a couple of reasons. One, being vulnerable on behalf of TA, right? I think there's this people pleasing. We live to serve and support, and we love the rush of being the SMEs and delivering. But I also think we were trying to fix inconsistencies and bias and inefficiency. So TA built the structure, the compliance, and the visibility. But in doing so, we started to create dependency. So for me, self-serve is about restoring some of that balance. It's not removing the structure, but redesigning ownership. That's my take on it.
Yeah, interesting. Any thoughts, Adam?
Go
ahead.
Yeah, I've got one more on this, and that is that honestly, they're not entirely sure what to say. They don't have the confidence to do this unless they've got a sales back, unless they're like the chief sales officer or something like that. They don't really know, what should I be saying? What should I say when they follow up? And they feel a little bit uncomfortable. We in recruitment feel like, well, everybody knows how to use LinkedIn and they're on it all the time. That's not the truth at all. Just because we think everyone else is. So there will be a bit of a confidence issue and like jumping into the unknown for them. That actually hand it over to the specialists, and it's more likely to go well.
Yeah, totally correct. And of course, we're staring at recruitment stuff all the time. We've probably acquired a lot of expertise, but it seems to me we've discovered a truth about outreach, which is actually, we need to reapply our expertise elsewhere. Like if it is the case that we're not the right person or the right identity to do the outreach, we kind of should use someone else. Now, Martin, you mentioned that you actually adopted the hiring manager identity, and it was still the recruiter doing the send out. There might be a few people saying, hang on, that's a bit, getting to the point where, are you misrepresenting stuff, or, is there a compliance issue in terms of who has access to email and stuff like this? Did you have that internal conversation at the time, Martin, or was it sort of something that people didn't think about?
We did, and one of the I remember a few hiring managers raised the issue around, hey, well, I'm going to connect this system up to my email. Can you see my emails? And we said no. All we can see is what's going out through the platform and what the responses are. We can't see anything else. So that was kind of, from a legal point of view, we didn't have any things that were raised. So that's all that we came up against. So on the reply on, so really, the reply on behalf bit, it still came from the hiring manager's email address, but it was actually, it could be in certain circumstances, depending on what was agreed with the hiring manager, the sourcer was actually typed in the message.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I mean, I remember in Candidate ID, we used to help in the first maybe 4 years of Candidate ID, we would do a lot of services in that area, and we would actually create campaigns and distribute the campaigns and do a lot of the marketing management for our customers. And we would always recommend that these nurture campaigns would go out from somebody who was like the head of the different business function that they were trying to nurture that talent pool for.
Yeah, I think the optimizer recruiter in me tells me that's totally fine. But then there's a small brainworm to say, hang on, we want to be authentic, want to be this, and this. So anyway, guys, I've just put a poll up on the on the Crowdcast. The poll is simply reply on behalf of the hiring manager. Is that a good or bad thing? What is your view? Would you do it, basically, if you knew it was actually more effective? Can you just pop a vote in there? Is it a good or bad thing? Essentially, recruiter types from the hiring manager email or proxy thereof. Let's have your votes on that and let me know what you think. Okay, cool. What does this all mean for recruiters, Lindsay? It seems that, hang on, I'm getting a hiring manager's doing the outreach and then they're doing the engagement. Presumably, I can deploy some sort of screening tool or pre-screening thing that can help to do that first stage interview. And, then it's just straight into where's the recruiter role? Is it really going to disappear in this way? If so, okay, let's deal with that. Is that a good or bad thing? And secondly, where else would a recruiter apply their time if they do manage to execute this plan of delegating hard to the hiring manager?
So for me, it's about, and I know we've worked hard for a long time for the relationship between TA and the hiring manager to be a partnership. And I know we've talked for many years about being more consultative, but this really gives us the chance to do that. So TA becomes less of a service desk. Recruiters become more like a coach or a talent consultant. For me, I see us moving from gatekeeping to enabling, to shaping strategy, advising on market conditions, and stepping in where the risk is high or maybe the hire is complex. And I think for me, then that ultimately positions talent acquisition to be a lot more strategic. I know, as again, we've talked about this for 10, 15 years, and I'm tired of talking about TA needing to be more strategic, but we do now have the opportunity to shift from doing to advising, from task execution to talent intelligence. TA own the systems, we own the standards, and we own that brand, but we enable the managers to operate confidently within that framework. So for me, it's a value shift and not a volume one.
Yeah, really good thoughts. How about your thoughts on this, Martin? I think you popped out now and you're working as a consultant on this. So how have you developed your theories as to what the relationship between hiring managers and TAs will be going forward with your recent experience and also your research after you've left there, Grab?
I think there's not a lot more I could add to what Lindsay said. I think it's just shifting the value, right, and moving to being much more consultative and looking forward, not backwards. So on the talent insights, and here's an example. Singapore is a high cost country, right, to employ people. So where I see freeing up time for a recruiter into what we talked about is they could be looking at things like, so where are the low cost countries within the region where there's the talent that I can think about, moving some of my people to. So I think it's that talent intelligence, it's that, helping the business kind of de-risk those sorts of decisions, right? So that's kind of where I see it moving to. So again, I think it's much more kind of lead than kind of lag type of work, right? So it's looking forward, understanding what the lay of the land is and trying to make some sense of, okay, so maybe we should do this, here's the reasons, and not do this, here's the reasons. Another good example I can give, and this is a real example, we had India, we had cybersecurity people, they got headhunted every 12 months, right? We were constantly hiring them. It became a real pain. So we looked at other countries to see where we could actually hire these people. The decision was made that the capability in the other countries wasn't at the level of India, so we'll just suffer the pain and just keep rehiring them. Because that was just de-risking the business, in terms of that, yeah. So that's kind of the sort of stuff that I think where we need to move to.
But I think recruiters need to embrace this change, right, and really get ahead of it, because we are evolving. We have to survive and add true value. Whether you're in corporate HR, corporate businesses, or RPO, or even agency, right? And for me, it's really important that we create an environment where hiring the talent is everyone's job, not just recruiters, not just TA.
Yeah, really good point. I just want to address Nathan's view there about, listen, we can't have hiring managers sifting through hundreds of applications. I think that's absolutely true. But the reality of it is it won't be the case, because the technology is going to help you do that. We're very, very close to the point where I would say by the end of this year, almost every core tool that you have will probably have some sort of CV filter or an application filter in there, which is artificial intelligence, is basically going to be able to read a CV as good as you can, if not better. In which case, it should scale out and be able to handle as many candidates' applications as possible, such that you're only interacting with the ones that the AI has decided is right or wrong. Now, this is where Martin's going to pull what's remaining of his hair out, because he's probably going to say, I hope you don't mind using that joke, Martin. And this is not you, Martin, Warren. I was Martin Redstone.
Redstone, he's talking about, yeah.
Yeah, but basically, I think all these tools are like ordering candidates already. And I struggle to see how that is different from it kind of selecting which ones go forward, even though it's like we're dealing with semantics. We're not going to veto the recommendation, is my perspective. And the only scenario where we can veto the AI recommendation is if we're doing it in a biased way. Like, what other information am I bringing to my decision to say no to that AI recommendation, other than the fact I'm biased? So I don't think that stands. I think we're going to just rubber stamp the recommendation. Yes, humans will be in the loop, but we're just going to rubber stamp it through. And we're just going to have to ethically deal with that at some other point. Anyway, that's my little rant. Go ahead.
Can I propose a vision, which and a lot of people here are not going to like, but I just want to propose a vision, and I'd like to know what people think about this, because this is absolutely can be done today, which is hiring manager has a resignation in the team. They press the button within the HR system. That sends a message into the applicant tracking system to set up the rec. The rec then determines like what's the right way to go about hiring for this role, and either starts automating a sourcing process within the internal, the CRM, the internal HR database, or any external marketplaces that they've got, access to, including LinkedIn. It determines, should this be advertised? If so, where? And then sends out the adverts. The applications come in, nobody's going to be sifting hundreds of CVs. That's not a thing. That shouldn't be a thing in 2020, in May 2025 at all, right? And then so there's automated processes for doing that. Then it goes into the scheduling, who's getting invited to the first stage or to take part in the assessment or whatever. That sends out a signal to the long list to say take part in this. The one's successful in that, then get invited into the interview. That's another completely automated process. The hiring manager turns up for what by this point is maybe the third stage of assessment or whatever, right? The Dave Owen's concept of the talent engineers, the talent engineering, that's what talent acquisition becomes. It becomes talent engineering. It becomes looking after designing the experience, designing the technology all to work. That's complete hiring manager self-service by that point. Like, tell us in the comments, is this a terrible vision? It might be a terrible vision, but this is the reality of what is going to be happening probably in most companies, most large companies, by mid 2027, and certainly is already happening in some companies.
Yeah, and I'll lean in with Lindsay's view. It's like we've got to lean into this vision and not gatekeep it, because I think, firstly, I don't think gatekeeping is going to be effective, guys. I think it's a bit like King Canute sitting in the North Sea, demonstrating the futility of trying to stop the sea. It ain't going to stop. You're going to be outcompeted by companies that do automate these flows. In which case, I didn't realize Dave's sort of vision so you did me a favor by outlining this, Adam. It's architecting the system, so it's like constructing it this way. Now I think ultimately that does mean, this is a separate conversation, but it does probably mean that the overall numbers of people doing TA are going to go down within any particular business. So per company size, the ratio of TA to employees probably will go down, I would say, because you're not going to need like multiple architects. What we could do is have different types of work that TA people do. So for instance, let's say we reapply the productivity gains into things like talent retention. Let's say we think about, okay, so that opens up some L&D stuff we've got to do. That opens up internal mobility we've got to do. All kinds of different avenues. Again, the reason why I'm talking about expanding scope is exactly this. We kind of got to get away from sort of talent acquisition, narrow sort of guardrails like this, and payroll permanent on-site only. That's the vision. Actually, no, we've got to go much broader, and we've got to think about, okay, can I help a person, the right people into the business? Can I keep them in the company? Can I make sure even if they leave the company, they're still in the community somehow, so that sort of we as a brand, we as a business still can leverage sort of talent that exists outside of the payroll.
And it's getting ahead of, and I've put it in the chat there, workforce planning for me is just so crucial. And for those who know me a little bit better than others, you'll know I have a real passion for workforce planning, whether it's strategic or whether it's just critical in the next 6 months demand planning. But that's where I would want to see recruiters around the world spending time, working cross-functionally with, functional leaders, finance, and really understanding, okay, what are our enterprise-wide objectives? How are we going to get there? What talent do we need to get there? And really taking it, several layers back, rather than, oh, Adam resigned, we better go and backfill. That's where, I want to see TA spend more time. So again, it's that complete kind of HR ecosystem, even rather than the hiring ecosystem.
I just want to respond, because not everybody's on Crowdcast where some of the chat is here. Some people are on LinkedIn, and Maurie's made a very good point. She's said, of course, we need to stop talking about recruiting as if there's only one model, because what I just said was effectively as if there's only one model. So it was a slightly lazy generalization, and absolutely for exec level hiring, for in-demand talent hiring, I'm not going to do that complete self-serve model for hiring AI scientists or something like that. It's going to be, a very much more of a red carpet kind of approach. So Maury was absolutely right to call me out on that.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because where does self-serve immediately make sense with the technology that we have? Martin, you've already talked about where there was very hard to hire elite talent where maybe the response rate was low. Let's have a think about other places where it immediately make sense. So panelists, have a think about this. But before you say anything, let me just address the audience real quick, because I just noticed the time. We're flying through this conversation. Folks, Brain Food Live has to come off air in about 20 minutes. We have to make sure, of course, that the conversation doesn't stop. We never want to be a bottleneck in this having started this chat. So if you care about this topic, hiring manager self-serve, what does the future look like, and our relationship with hiring managers, what you want to do is make sure you speak to all the folks that are interested in it also. And the way to do that is simply grab your LinkedIn URL, stick it in the chat. If you're watching this on any of the LinkedIns, make sure you just put your LinkedIn in the comment thread. And then that's a big signal to everyone else to say, you know what, I want to connect with people that care about this topic. Go ahead and do that. Connect with everyone you see. Worst case scenario, you leave with 10, 20 friends that care about this topic. Go ahead, have an offsite, have a chat offline, should I say, on this topic, and you've got a ready to go network to do that. Okay, so where else does hiring manager self-serve like immediately become obvious? We know about elite talent. It's hard to hire, the hard to hire skills. Where else does it make sense?
Go Adam. Yeah. So I was just going to say, I think one area where we probably should explore this, and that's internal mobility. There's systems that we have now that potentially can do this for us, but it opens up another I think issue, and that is, do we want to, or how do we kind of internally kind of engage people in other teams, right? Because we don't want to be seen as talent poaching, and then again, we don't want talent hoarding, right? So I think internal mobility is one area where we really need to think about this, and I think hiring manager self-serve is one area, because what I've seen with a lot of people get internal roles not by going and looking at the job board, the jobs posted on the internal job board. They get it through their internal networks, either going and talking to the recruiter that hired them or talking to hiring managers that they know and things like that. So I think that's one area where I think we really should look at.
Well, hang on, Martin. Wouldn't that exacerbate the problem, though? Because I would feel that, okay, if you just let hiring managers loose internally, they might just be like cannibalistically cracking through everything. It'll be like,
it has to happen. It's mandatory that happens. If it doesn't happen, then the person's going to go somewhere else. You've got to encourage every
I would say TA should do that. I mean, there should be a centralized function in some way, rather than just unleash the hiring managers in a completely decentralized way.
So, Hung, I agree with you. So there's got to be a framework in place, and there's got to be certain guidelines, right? Because you don't want a free-for-all, right? But also, I think it's got to be, it's like, it's got to be embedded into the hiring managers, right? You should be talking to your people, what's your next move and things like that. But I also think as a program, it can be run through a central center of excellence, and I think you can control some of that stuff and monitor it. But look, you're always going to get the rogue player, right? So, but I just think it's a huge opportunity that we need to really look at and consider.
All right, I'm pro internal mobility, but I'm not convinced about letting them loose. Go ahead, Lindsay, your thoughts.
I'm not maybe there yet. I can see where Martin's going, though. For me, I would say getting the hiring managers to self-serve more on like creating the job description. So whether it's using guided tools or AI prompts, so that it aligns with the job architecture. Accessing salary benchmarks or to sort of pre-approved compensation ranges to really make faster market aligned offers. Why are we so precious, especially in the HR function, at keeping some of that data away? And when I speak to leaders, in any company I've worked with, especially with Brooks Automation, they want to be trusted. They want to, be leaders. They want to be managers. They could be reviewing talent pipelines. They could be, guess what, scheduling interviews with automated calendar tools. They could be using structured interview guides, again, aligned to those corporate competencies, values, behaviors, providing feedback and kind of making those hiring decisions. And for me, another one, self-serve on TA data. I don't know how many times we have to create a report or export a report and put it into an Excel document for a hiring manager to say they know what's going on with their recruitment. Well, give them that self-service, and that's what we've certainly been doing here in other companies I've worked with. give them the pipeline health, give them the time to hire. But again, it's not for every hiring manager. You mentioned it, Martin, and Adam, you've mentioned it. We need to make sure that the hiring managers have that confidence. And I would say anyone looking to do this, start small in the company before doing a full kind of global switch on, and hey, go for it, people.
Totally.
Adam's disagreeing, I can tell.
Well, the only thing about that is I think, and I've actually posted in the comments, I think it needs to be an institutional decision to do it, because if you only do it, if like only a couple of hiring managers are empowered to do it, like the ones who haven't been part of the program, they're going to be like, what the hell?
No, see, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it would be very much an institutional decision, but you start small with a proof of concept, not a pilot, a proof of concept. And
in
I think,
tech or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, this has to be something that everyone buys into, and then we chunk it and say, okay, we're going to run here with engineering, or we're going to go here in this country, or these hiring managers, and then let it go viral internally. But Martin could probably talk more to this, how he's been able to bring it to life.
I would actually want to go there next, that Martin, because there might be some people listening here and think, you know what, I fancy giving this a go, because we're not having a sort of any success in current mode. We're going to try and get the hiring manager to do this. Tell us a little bit about how you implemented this in Grab. Like, how did you pitch it? How did you win the argument? Was there any objections? What was all that about, man?
So, just to clarify, we actually never implemented it. There was some very, very initial conversation, but that's as far as it got. So, and for the reasons that, like you guys are raising, but I still think it's something that, we need to seriously think about. So we never actually.
I meant about the outreach for the candidates, hiring manager outreach.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about internal mobility. Sorry, I misunderstood. So for candidate outreach. So how did we pitch this? It was really because we had a lot of demand from hiring managers. They're under a lot of pressure, right? And we needed to come up with some different ways to speed up the process, right? And this was all from our outbound sourcing. We weren't having any issues in terms of finding candidates or finding, the quality or the quantity of candidates. It was about fast response. That's really what it came down to. So this was multiplied by volume across, volume or numbers of roles across different locations. So I went to one of the head of engineering leaders, and I put this to him, and he was very much. He was a real talent magnet. He used to drive his engineers, his -1s and -2s around recruitment. So he took it on and ran with it. So that's kind of really how it came about, and it just snowballed from there. So it was really that there was a demand, to move the process faster, and that's what we ended up doing. Put the hiring manager, at the centre of it to really drive that engagement, that speed.
Yeah, so maybe that's one of the things that you can look at if you're watching this. Have a look at some of the areas of recruiting that is sticky. It's a bit hard. The pressure is, if it's not already there, it will happen because of the pace of hiring is too slow. It could well be, hey, let's switch out the identity of the outreacher. Let's see whether we can get some action going. Good stuff. Okay, so apart from that, is there any other sort of places where you think it might be useful? I guess I'm trying to think. So this is a sign of time. So I'm hesitant to even say. Could we use it from a diversity angle? Would this be sort of, let's say, I'm imagining. Look, the identity of the hirer or the identity of the outreacher has a significant component to the response rate. Let's say that's something we accept. Could it also be the case that this goes down to the identity, the demographics of the person that we're speaking to? So, for instance, we're looking to recruit. We're a very male-dominated organization. Let's say we're getting very poor response rates from the female candidates we're reaching out to. But actually, we've got a hiring manager that is female. That's a great avatar. It's a great identity. We could replicate it that way. And obviously, you can sub in your identity of choice there. Thoughts on this?
I've got a bit of insight on that. I posted in the chat. It's a little bit of ancient history, but between 2009 and 2015-16. I ran a company called Social Media Search, and we did a lot of done-for-you social media services for talent acquisition. We used to take over the LinkedIn profiles for hiring managers very regularly and go and get them connected with like every clinical project manager in their country or whatever it might be to build up talent pools. we always recommended, I mean, this is just shameless marketing, but it's the truth, right? It's just performance optimization. Every time we did it with a female hiring manager, we got more people connecting, more people responding than with a male. So from the perspective of pure performance, that works best in my experience, which is maybe a little bit ancient history now.
Ancient history, but I think it's just there is a technique, right? I mean, there are certain patterns. I mean, we're using gender as an example here, but I'm sure it translates in other places as well. We do respond a little bit better, I think, to people that are just a little bit more like us. That's like standard sort of like consensus in DE&I sort of stuff, isn't it? Like we know on advertising, let's forget about sourcing for the time being. On advertising, we think it is completely obvious and normal to say, if we have a person of certain identity on an advert, that's going to encourage other people of the share that identity to apply. Like we assume that's totally true and actually right and no problem. So why doesn't the same thing apply on outreach? I think it probably does, right?
Well,
so we should be that shy about saying it.
Yes, but females are considered less threatening than males in general in terms of like online one-to-one sort of the social media approach.
Yep, I think that's fair as well.
Another example that we had down here in Southeast Asia was, the hiring manager could be based in Singapore, but we're hiring in the role in Vietnam, right? What we found is if the outreach came from a senior person in Vietnam versus Singapore, then that drove some better replies as well. So, because some, they want to kind of connect to people that they kind of in their own country or speak their own language and things like that. So we saw a little bit of that as well.
I think for underrepresented talent in particular, that direct outreach, I'm going to say, can make a huge difference. To your point, Hung, when people see people just like them. And I would say that the caveat is that the message still has to be inclusive. We can't just hand hiring managers the keys without, I guess, giving them some guidance on tone, language, or potential bias. But Adam, 100%, when females reach out, you tend to find it less threatening for sure. But I would say that, again, where TA plays a critical role here is going back to equipping our managers with those inclusive outreach templates, no matter who sends it.
Yeah, and that's where we sort of from a compliance point of view, best practice point of view, etc. That's an evolving sort of space for recruiters to be in charge of, really, because I'm sure the hiring managers, let's say we do give them this type of responsibility, I'm sure they'll be looking for some guidance on how it works. They wouldn't see that necessarily as a constraint. They see it as, okay, I'm not comfortable without the guidance actually to do this type of outreach. So, okay, give us one more sort of
quickly to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Quickly to that, I've got a hard stop in 1 minute. I just wanted to quickly leave one last like nugget for people, which, if I can, which is like look into, if you want to automate a lot of this stuff around like outreach and building engagement with people on social media and things like that, and you want to make it it's not even self-service, just a complete done for you thing. Look into RevOps technologies, because on the mainstream sales and marketing side, they have done so much. They have created so much innovation recently. If you want to take one tool, for example, go and look at Clay and what that is capable of, CLAY, in terms of like automating communications and automating engagement between, right? In this case, in the main use case is for sales purposes. You stick hiring managers into the middle of that and use it for that. And by the way, sales and marketing tools are much cheaper than recruiting tools. So you might find that it's pretty good value opportunities in there.
Didn't Clay just raise something at like $1 billion value? They are a unicorn, really. They're so heavily used by anybody in sales. They've just instantly become dominant. Catherine, thank you for your comment there. I totally appreciate what you're saying. And by the way, I think the ethical side of it is very, very significant. Ethical catfishing, that's a debate we need to have. Let's have a look at the poll here. I think the poll will probably validate. We didn't get many people voting for it. However, 62% said replying on behalf of the hiring manager as the hiring manager was no bueno. So this is obviously a debate we need to have internally within the community to say, look, where are we sitting with this? Where do we all fit? Okay, cool. Listen, we are coming to the end of this show. So I've got to say thank you to our guests, Martin, Warren. Wonderful to see you. I know it's super late in Singapore, so thanks for sticking around. Hope you have a very good night and a good weekend. Lindsay, great to see you. Sorry about getting the color scheme wrong on the dress. It is obviously coral. What the heck is the matter with me? I have a very good weekend, Lindsay. I hopefully see you soon. And folks, great to see you. Thanks for joining Bring Food Live on Air. Hope you've enjoyed it. We're back next week, of course, every Friday, no fail. Next week is going to be a super interesting show. We're going to be talking about Chief of Staff. What is a Chief of Staff? What is this role? Who can do it? Can TA do it? So we've got a bunch of people, actually really interesting. We've got Ben Craig, for Chief of Staff at Miro, is joining us. We've got Teddy Owen. I think he worked the Chief of Staff at Square or something. So a lot of people who've got prior experience of working for this, really, I won't say strange role, but I think it's a misunderstood role. And yeah, how does it relate to TA and HR? And is it a potential pathway for some of us in the industry? Make sure you join us for that. We're on Friday, 2 p.m. Okay, folks, that's about it. You have a good weekend. I'll see you next week.